Stephen Isaacs. He's chairman of the investment committee at Alvine Capital and also the CEO of the ECU Group. Stephen, thanks for being with us. We're still talking about Greece. Is Greece a special case, or is this something that should be worrying investors still?
Well, if you're not worried about Greece now, I'm not sure when you're going to start worrying. I mean, of course it's a worry, and despite sort of many rounds of negotiations, here we are again with effectively the fundamentals still in place, which is, are they going to really get a control of their fiscal situation or not? And, you know,
but European leaders are trying to convince us that Greece is a special case, that other countries aren't going to be doing debt deals as well.
Yeah, well, they've not done a very good job there either, have they? I mean, the contagion is palpable, and you can see it with the bond yields. I mean, Italy still above 7% is 10-year bonds. So if that's not contagion, what is?
So is progress being made?
Well, I mean, they're kicking the can down the road. It hasn't exploded yet, but I would hardly describe it as progress. And unfortunately, with a huge amount of bond refinancing, Italy's got to refinance 160 billion euros by April. That is the problem. If you weren't already in a mess, then of course it would be much easier to have a leisurely approach. But if you've got so much refinancing to do, then I'm afraid private sector involvement in this refinancing, I'm afraid, is going to be very limited.
Stephen, the merry-go-round of meetings between political leaders continues today, Merkel and Monti, but all eyes on the ECB, of course, on Thursday. And I know you've been wanting to stress the difference between Mr. Draghi and Mr. Trichet. It seems as if Draghi is a bit closer to Bernanke than maybe Trichet, isn't he?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. I mean, I think we're in the era of the central banker as a sort of rock star of the financial world. So I think the personalities of who is at the top are far more important in terms of trying to work out their decision-making process. I mean, sorry.
I just want to interject for a moment and just tell people a little bit more about Mario Draghi as we talk about the differences between him and Trichet. The focus, of course, ahead of this week's policy meeting with the ECB. Let's look at whether the bank is changing. It's definitely changing under Draghi. The ECB has been he's overseen 2 quarter-point rate cuts since taking the presidency in November. Draghi is the second most powerful central banker in the world after Fed President Ben Bernanke. Here's where he differs. He's got a PhD in economics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where Bernanke also studied. You'd say it's this background that makes him an interesting contrast to his predecessor, Jean-Claude Trichet. Trichet stuck to the same old mandate every time. He stressed that mandate every single time he spoke.
Well, Trichet was the sort of consummate French insider, the career civil servant. And he went about it in a very crusty, a very resolute way, so let's not criticize him. And he was always at pains to point out that he was setting monetary policy for 331 million people. I mean, Draghi, early days, only 2 months into the job, but the point I'm making is that it's important to try and understand what makes these people tick. The other graduate of MIT, by the way, is Mervyn King, another interventionist. So I think the point is that...
But knowing what makes Draghi tick, his background, MIT, whatever, where are we heading?
Well, we are joining the dots, of course, but the point I'm making is I think that we have, as the New York Times described Draghi as an energized leader. I think, okay, it is early days yet.
Perhaps a maverick like Hildebrand over at the SNB?
Let's come to in a second, but another interventionist, you're absolutely right. I mean, Hildebrand was the architect of a very controversial policy in Switzerland, and that was effectively, first of all, a mass round of intervention to cap the Swiss franc's rise, and then finally the link with the euro at 120. That was a very controversial and very interventionist policy. I think, looking a little bit further down the line, I don't think Draghi's going to come out and say, oh, by the way, we're backstocking the European government bond market. If anybody expects that, they are being a little foolish. In the same way that Bernanke hasn't come around, or Mervyn King has come around and said, well, the reason why we're doing quantitative easing is because we want to backstop the US Treasury market or the gilt market.
So what will they do?
Well, they may well do it. I think Draghi will do it, but he won't use that as the reason.
He won't announce it.
He won't announce it. That won't be the reason. I mean, central bankers are not going to give politicians a blank check. What I think he will do, and I think it will probably take another twist of the crisis for him to be galvanized, I think what he will do is traditional quantitative easing. He'll come out and say, right, the economic situation in Europe is so bad that we have to, as part of our mandate, expand our balance sheet and provide support to all government bond markets.
So it sounds like, in a word, you prefer the Draghi way.
Well,
in a word.
whether we like it or not, we just need to
Let's
be,
start with it.
as investors, we need to be aware of the fact that if mass quantitative easing is coming, and I believe it is, led by the ECB this time round, that's going to make a big difference to markets.
Got to move it on, Stephen. Thanks for joining us today. Stephen Isaacs, Chairman of the Investment Committee at Alvine Capital.
Thanks very much.